Hi, folks. Omri here. I hope you're well. I've moved so you can see a little bit different background back here, but to share a little bit about me. It's not something that I'm always comfortable sharing, but I feel like I haven't necessarily shared a whole lot. And I also want to talk about the notion of lived experience. It's something that I want to talk about in a few videos, but I'll just tell this story a little bit about me and talk a little bit about that. So when I was a kid, I used to watch my dad, who was a mortician and ran a mortuary, owned a couple mortuaries, travel up and down Interstate 70 in Kansas. So it runs across the United States, but in Kansas in particular, where my dad had businesses. He worked in Kansas City, Kansas. He worked in Topeka, Kansas, and he worked in Lawrence, Kansas. So he was up and down the highway working. Sometimes he'd leave at 5, go to Kansas City, embalm a body there or 2, and then come back at 10, 11, 12 at night. So I didn't always see him, but a couple times he got into crashes because he nodded off. And so I was always nervous about that. And I would have dreams, night terrors about that. Couldn't articulate it, couldn't tell him, but it was on my mind quite a bit. So now when I travel, I'm often thinking about how my son is picturing my travel. Now, obviously, I haven't been driving, so the risk of that, I haven't been driving late. I've been very privileged to be able to travel by airplanes most of the time that I'm traveling, but I always wonder what his experience of my travel is because he can't articulate it. One, because he speaks mostly German, and I can't always understand everything he's saying. And two, he's 4 years old. And it's hard for a 4-year-old to articulate that. He just turned 4 on the 28th. So what's my point here? One is when I think about my son and my son's lived experience, as we often talk about in the DEI space and organizational culture and anything that involves change or shifts, the embodied or lived experience of people is critical. We can't be without it. And it's an incomplete picture. Obviously, you can capture a lot of different lived experiences, but there's no single lived experience that predominates what is actually going on in an organizational culture or in a community. So we have to understand that the lived experience, while extremely important, is not the de facto full capital T truth. It is slivers of pieces of small fractals of truths. And when we pull them all together, we can have a part of the picture, but then we have to make sense together to make that picture full. I'm going to tell a story later about how that occurred to me and what it taught me about my experience with race and racism. Not, again, that's not complete, but it gives a little bit of a window. So when we think about lived experience, just know that it's not a complete picture. It's part of the picture. It's an important part of the picture, but it's not one that is based on any single lived experience of any single person. So it cannot say that this is how the world is. And I think we all can agree to that, but oftentimes we anchor on lived experience to such an extent that we might possibly be missing something, even though there's a particular lived experience that overlaps. But how that experience occurs to us might be different from person to person, even those that have a similar, often and historically underrepresented identity. So I hope that was helpful. Make it a great day. Peace.